His dirty blonde hair draped down to the cusp of his shoulders, while his dark brown eyes became the standout feature of his moderate complexion. He didn't look like a mugger, nor did he really seem all that dangerous. Ren eased off his tension, if only by a small margin. "Shall we?" the man said as he extended his arm towards the sidewalk. The man had a cool demeanor about him, as if he was aware he was controlling the situation. Taking a few steps down the street, he turned back to Ren and gave a waving motion with his hand. Cautious as she was, Ren reluctantly followed, allowing himself to be the selfless man the community expected him to be. "Pretty dark out tonight," the man said, "don't you think?" "The night is black without a moon," Ren replied. "It sure is. How was your day, father? No doubt brighter than the current state of the sky, I take it." Ren quickly thought back to Heather lying naked beside him, committing sin in grand fashion no more than 20 minutes ago. "Uneventful," Ren replied. "Just a normal evening, I suppose." "Say," the man replied with a chuckle, "you do have a sense of humor. You're always so stoic when you're giving sermons. I guess you put up a pretty good act." More thoughts of Heather, the way her tongue twisted around every crevice, the little mole on her left thigh. He shook it off, observing the man in his entire mystifying swagger as they walked side by side down the block. "Might I ask your name, son?" "Back to the norm, I see. Does it matter what my name is?" "I have nothing to call you outside of son, or sir, if you prefer. Or if you like it, Francis. Just call me Francis. It's what I've been using for a long time. Don't see why I should change now." "You say that like you're against it." "Well, let's just say it's not my favorite." Basically, he was interrupted by a subtle buzzing sound that emitted itself in a rhythmic fashion. Ren looked over to see Francis dig into his pocket to pull out his phone. Ren couldn't get a good look at the screen, but he noticed a sudden shift in Francis' facial expression when he looked at the caller ID. The cool demeanor he had before was replaced by a look of apprehension. He pointed his index finger up at Ren, signifying he would need a moment to speak to whoever was on the other end. "Yes, I'm aware of what I'm... No, of course I can. I'll get there eventually. But yes, I understand. Whatever you say." With that, he hung up and slid the phone back into his pants pocket. Ren heard Francis begin to say something under his breath. He wasn't able to catch what Francis was saying, not only due to the volume at which he spoke, but also because much of what he was saying didn't sound like English. "Is there an issue?" Ren asked. "Hmm? Oh, not exactly. My father just doesn't like me lollygagging is all. He's a very straight-to-the-point kind of guy. I don't get out much, but when I do, I like to take my time. You understand, right?" "Uh-huh," Ren replied with confusion. "I think I see what you mean. Let me ask you something, father. Do you enjoy your position? As a man of God, I mean." "Well, sure. I believe I have made the right choice in life. It's not easy, mind you, and I have given into temptations more than I would have liked. But I believe these are all just tribulations on the proving path." "Temptations, you say? And here I thought a priest was supposed to be void of any and all temptations." Ren was getting suspicious. He had never seen Francis around the church before, but he seemed to be inquiring into a territory where most didn't tread. He couldn't quite figure Francis out. Something seemed off about him, in a way a person may suspect a thief in their store. He had a lingering presence, but displayed himself with decisive calculation. Ren figured he could play along for a little while longer. He didn't want to do anything to set him off. "We are human, so yes," Ren continued. "But nothing major, I assure you. I'm not going out and killing people, but I have the occasional slip up where I'll swear I'll become angry at something when it isn't necessary. Nothing major? Francis replied. His voice curled like a hissing of a snake. Only petty curses and anger. I wonder what Heather Wilson's parents would think of that statement. On the outside, Ren continued to pace along with Francis as though he hadn't missed a beat. But on the inside, Ren's reaction was that of complete distress. It did seem to be coincidence that Francis would bring up Heather no more than 10 minutes since Ren left her parents' apartment. But how could Francis know he was even there in the first place? Ren, though faintly panicking on the inside, continued his pace as though Francis hadn't said a word, knowing full well that playing it cool would likely be his best bet. He scanned his surroundings quickly and noticed a couple approaching them on the sidewalk. He recognized them as the Martins, a couple who regularly attends his services and would never expect to see him outside of church. Ren pulled down the brim of his hood as far as he could, just enough to see a few feet of the sidewalk before him. He had to keep up appearances. Heather Wilson? Ren asked. I don't see why she or her parents would care about my periodic anger. I don't know. You are a man of God, after all, doing his work when he himself sits upon high heaven. How can you express living an honest life when you yourself are committing sins every day? Ren gave an inner sigh of relief. It must have been coincidence that Francis brought up Heather and her family. Perhaps he actually knew them personally. Or maybe he, after all, Francis continued, you are fucking their daughter right behind their backs. Ren's tension shot back up to 100 as he stopped dead in his tracks. Francis took a few more steps before he realized Ren had stopped following him. As he watched Francis slowly turn to face him, he noticed a devilish grin etched across Francis's face, as if he was letting all of it sink in. How do you know that? Ren asked. Who are you? Now isn't that the question of the hour? Francis replied as he slowly paced his way towards Ren. Such an interesting question to ask. Who are you exactly, Father? That's fitting, isn't it, Father? How many ways does that title befit you? You're a minister, obviously. If you keep fucking around with Heather, you'll likely become a father. Hell, the way I see it, you're old enough to even be her father. Does she call you father in bed? Daddy, baby? As if I already didn't know the answer. She was moaning it no more than a couple of minutes ago, and Ren made a quick lunge towards Francis and pinned him against the wall of the store before them. He moved toward with such speed that his hood fell back behind his neck, allowing him to clearly see the unchanged expression across Francis's face, and allowing all others to see the irritated expression across his. Is this some kind of joke? Who the fuck are you? Come on now, Father. I don't think that the Martins would appreciate that kind of tone, especially coming from you. Ren froze as he heard a pair of footsteps inching closer and closer. He had completely forgotten the Martins were walking towards them, and in shock, he realized his hood had fallen, exposing himself for the entire block to see. It was far too late now. He was uncovered, and the couple was close enough now that they likely witnessed the entire course of Ren's aggressive actions. Regrettably, he turned towards the oncoming couple and formed whatever excuse he could think of. Please don't take this the wrong way, Ren began to plead. I acted out of anger, and I would never expect you to. Ren slowed his speech as the Martins completely passed him without even acknowledging his presence. He knew what he did was out of his character, but it wasn't enough for people to completely disregard him, especially those he knew. He heard dark giggling coming from behind him, and turned to see Francis leaning against the wall Ren had previously pinned him against, savoring every second. Isn't that strange? Francis said. It's as if they didn't even know you, like you didn't even exist. But you're wondering how that's even possible. I could see it in your face. Why don't we keep walking? There's much to discuss. No, Ren replied frantically.